Have you ever noticed how serving God can begin in rest and slowly end in performance? Not because we turn away from Him, but because we slowly shift from trust to effort. And that's not where we want to be. We want to live from rest, spirit-led, surrendered, not anxious, not performing, just aligned with God. Rest is about source. Performance is about self. That's the difference. Now, rest does not mean inactivity, and performance does not always look frantic. You can be very busy and deeply resting. You can be very calm and still performing, because the difference is not what you are doing, but what you are dependent on. Performance says, I must hold this together. Rest says, God is already at work. And here's where the shift begins. Performance creeps in when our identity starts riding on the outcome, when we feel pressure not to serve, but to prove, when anxiety becomes the fuel, when we are more aware of ourselves than of God. Rest is not the absence of preparation. Preparation is positioning yourself to receive. Performance, on the other hand, is attempting to supply. Preparation says, Lord, shape me, fill me, align me. Performance says, I must not get this wrong. Preparation says, Lord, I'm available, I'm listening, I'm yielded. Performance says, I need to make this work, I will figure it out. Preparation done in rest becomes an act of worship. It's fueled by love for truth. It leaves room for God to interrupt, and it produces confidence without pressure. But when preparation slips into performance, fear of inadequacy takes over. We begin to feel responsible for outcomes more than for faithfulness. We feel pressure to appear capable. And waiting on God begins to feel uncomfortable. And we start to believe that we must bring something to the table or else fail. So here's the balance. Preparation ends where trust begins. You prepare faithfully and you act dependently. So pause and ask yourself, am I trying to produce something for God or receive something from Him? If it's the first, pause. If it's the second, proceed. Oswald Chambers echoed this truth. The great hindrance to our spiritual life is that we look upon our service as something we do for God instead of something God does through us. Notice Chambers doesn't say a hindrance. He says the great hindrance. Why? Because we quietly replace dependence with effort. Alignment with God does not remove effort. It reorders it. Effort that flows from trust is obedience. Effort that replaces trust is performance. Paul understood this distinction. He could say, I worked harder than all of them, yet not I, but the grace of God that was with me. 1 Corinthians 15:10. That's not performance. That's grace-filled obedience. And this is exactly what Oswald Chambers was getting at, because he understood something many overlook. You can be obedient in activity and still disobedient in posture. Service done for God instead of through Him subtly keeps God at a distance, not because you have stopped serving, but because you have stopped abiding. But Jesus never said, apart from me, you can do less. He said, apart from me, you can do nothing. That's not condemnation, it's liberation. Liberation from carrying what was never ours to carry. Rest is not something you switch on. It is something you learn to remain in. That's why Jesus said, learn from me and you will find rest. Matthew 11 verse 29. Learning implies unlearning. Early on, rest feels like relief. Later, rest feels like stability. And eventually, rest carries quiet authority. So today I ask you, are you trying to produce something for God or receive something from Him? Are you serving from pressure or from presence? Because God never called us to perform for Him. He called us to abide in Him. And when we do, rest remains and fruit follows. May we grow in the grace, knowledge, and favor of the Lord.